He stopped because something inside him broke. Jonathan Roumie, the man millions see as the face of Jesus in The Chosen, reached a point where he couldn't keep going. The cameras were rolling, the crew was silent, and the weight of everything, the role, the expectations, the pain, finally caught up to him. What happened that day shocked everyone. It wasn't part of the script. It wasn't rehearsed. It was real. Season 5 of The Chosen has pushed Jonathan further than he's ever gone before. Physically, emotionally, and spiritually. And for the first time, he admitted it. He had to stop. Because the line between portraying Jesus and feeling his pain has blurred so deeply, he's no longer sure where the character ends and where he begins. For years, Jonathan Roumie has carried a role unlike any other in modern television. A role that isn't just about acting, but about faith, sacrifice, and the human soul. But now, that calling has turned into something heavier, something almost unbearable. In Season 5, The Chosen enters its darkest chapter. The betrayal, the agony, the crucifixion. And with it comes a new level of spiritual pressure that even Jonathan himself didn't expect. He said it started quietly, with small moments between takes, those moments of silence where he'd feel his heart pounding, his chest tightening, as if the emotions were no longer his own. "It felt like I wasn't Jonathan anymore," he confessed in a recent interview. "It felt like something else was taking over. Something deeper, something sacred, but also terrifying." Those around him noticed it too. Cast members described days when Jonathan would finish a scene and just walk away, unable to speak. He'd stand in the corner of the set, his head down, eyes distant, as if he were somewhere else entirely. No one dared to interrupt, because everyone knew what he was carrying wasn't ordinary emotion. It was something raw, spiritual, and dangerous to his peace of mind. Playing Jesus had always been an honor, but now it had become a cross he couldn't put down. Every sermon he delivered, every prayer he whispered, every tear he shed on camera, it wasn't just performance anymore. It was pain, real pain, and with each new scene, it grew heavier. Jonathan said there was one day in particular that he'll never forget. They were filming one of the most emotional moments of the entire series, a scene where Jesus faces the loneliness and fear that come before the crucifixion. Everything was ready. The cameras were rolling, the crew was silent, and as he began to speak, something inside him just stopped. He felt his throat close up, his hands shaking, and suddenly he couldn't say a word. The air around him felt thick, heavy, sacred. It wasn't nerves. It wasn't exhaustion. It was something spiritual, something that gripped his soul and refused to let go. He looked at Dallas Jenkins, the show's creator, and whispered, "I can't do this right now." Dallas nodded quietly and told the crew to pause. For several long minutes, Jonathan just stood there, silent, trembling, tears welling in his eyes. No one spoke. No one moved. Because in that moment, it wasn't Jonathan the actor standing there. It was a man collapsing under the weight of portraying Jesus himself. He later explained that the hardest part wasn't stopping the scene. It was admitting that he needed to. "I didn't want to seem weak," he said softly, "but it was like something inside me broke open. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't act. I couldn't even pray." The crew gave him space. He walked off the set and sat alone in his trailer for nearly an hour, trying to steady his breathing. Outside, the world continued as usual. Lights humming, people whispering, but inside, Jonathan was facing something few can understand. The spiritual toll of stepping into a story so sacred that it begins to change you from the inside out. "I thought I was prepared for this season," he said later, "but nothing could have prepared me for what it really meant to carry that weight." And that's the truth few people see. Behind the calm smile, behind the quiet faith and steady presence, Jonathan Roumie is fighting a private battle. A battle between devotion and exhaustion, faith and fear. Each season of The Chosen has brought him closer to something profound, but also closer to breaking. And in Season 5, that line has been crossed. This isn't just about an actor doing his job. It's about a man surrendering himself to a role so deeply that it's consuming him. He doesn't just play Jesus anymore. He feels his pain. And that feeling, as powerful as it is, has started to leave scars. Scars that don't fade when the cameras stop rolling. Jonathan's honesty about that day has shaken fans and crew alike, because for the first time, the man who has inspired millions by embodying Christ admitted he felt like he couldn't go on. It wasn't because of fame or fatigue, it was something far deeper. a kind of spiritual exhaustion that eats away slowly, scene by scene, until it leaves you hollow. He said that sometimes, after a long day on set, he drives home in silence. No music, no phone, just the quiet hum of the road and the lingering echo of the words he just spoke. Words that have been read for thousands of years, but now feel heavier than ever. I hear myself saying them, he said, and I think, who am I to say this? That question, that trembling sense of unworthiness, has followed him from season to season. But now, it's not just a thought. It's a wound. Season 5 isn't just testing Jonathan's craft. It's testing his soul. And when he says he had to stop filming, it's not a story about an actor losing focus. It's a confession from a man standing at the edge of something sacred and terrifying all at once. Because when you spend years walking in the footsteps of Jesus, you can't help but feel the stones under your feet. The pain, the fear, the loneliness. They're no longer part of the story. They're part of you. And for Jonathan Roumie, that realization has changed everything. The day Jonathan Roumie stopped filming wasn't just a pause in production. It was a moment of awakening. Something shifted in him that day, something he couldn't fully explain, even to himself. When he finally returned to set, the energy in the room had changed. Everyone felt it, a strange, sacred heaviness that hung in the air. The cameras were ready, the lights were fixed, but the man who stepped back in front of them was not the same. His face looked calm, but his eyes told another story, one of exhaustion, fear, and something close to heartbreak. He said later that when he looked around the set, he didn't see actors or props anymore. He saw the story, alive and breathing. He felt like he was standing inside something ancient, something holy. It's like walking on sacred ground, he said quietly, and every time I take a step, I'm terrified of breaking it. What most people don't understand is that The Chosen isn't filmed like an ordinary show. There's a spiritual energy that surrounds every scene, especially the ones that deal with pain, betrayal, and sacrifice. Jonathan often says that before stepping into those moments, he has to pray, not for the scene to go well, but for the strength to handle whatever comes up inside him while filming. Because every time he speaks as Jesus, he isn't just performing. He's reliving something that feels real, the weight of faith, the sorrow of loss, the loneliness of being misunderstood. All of it hits him like a wave, and the more he gives to the role, the more it takes from him. It's like pouring from a cup that never refills. He said, each day I feel a little emptier, but somehow that emptiness feels holy. It was during one of those emotionally charged days that Jonathan realized the toll had gone deeper than he thought. They were preparing to film a sequence where Jesus prays alone, a quiet moment. No dialogue, just silence and emotion. It should have been simple, but it wasn't. Jonathan said he felt something inside him tighten. His heart was racing. His breathing grew shallow, and suddenly he felt this overwhelming sadness he couldn't explain. I didn't know where it came from, he recalled. It was like something just broke open inside me. The crew noticed his hands shaking. Dallas Jenkins stepped forward, concerned, but Jonathan just shook his head and whispered, I can't feel my hands. The shoot stopped immediately. Everyone stepped back, giving him space, but Jonathan didn't move. He just stared at the ground, his eyes glassy, lost somewhere between the man he is and the man he's portraying. Later that evening, he told Dallas that he felt haunted, not by fear, but by emotion that wouldn't leave. It's like I can't turn it off, he said. Even when I go home, it's still there. The pain, the sadness, it follows me. He described lying awake at night, staring at the ceiling, unable to sleep. Every scene replayed in his mind, every word, every expression. It doesn't feel like acting anymore, he said. It feels like I'm stepping into something real. And maybe that's what makes Jonathan's portrayal of Jesus so different. He doesn't approach it like a performance, but like a calling. Yet that calling has started to take something from him. Bit by bit, it's wearing him down, emotionally, mentally, spiritually. Jonathan admitted that he sometimes questions whether he can keep doing this. Not because he's lost his faith, but because it's changed him so deeply that he no longer recognizes the person he was before. I used to be able to leave it all behind at the end of the day, he said. Now I can't. It comes home with me. He's described days where he sits in complete silence after filming, too drained to even speak. He doesn't turn on music. He doesn't check his phone. He just sits there, breathing, waiting for his heart to slow down. It's not the kind of exhaustion you can sleep off. It's something deeper, the kind that sits in your bones and whispers that you're not enough. That word again, unworthy. It keeps returning, haunting him like an echo that won't fade. "I don't feel worthy to do this," he said. But maybe that's the point. As The Chosen moves closer to depicting the crucifixion, that feeling has only grown stronger. Jonathan said that even reading the script for those scenes left him trembling. "I just sat there with tears in my eyes," he confessed. "I couldn't read it without feeling this deep sorrow. I kept thinking, how can I possibly do this justice?" And that's the heart of Jonathan's struggle, the fear of failing something sacred. He's not afraid of bad reviews or long hours. He's afraid of not honoring the story that's changed millions of lives. He's afraid of not being enough to carry it. That's the toll Season 5 has taken, not on his career, but on his soul. Behind the scenes, people have started to notice small changes in him. He's quieter now, more withdrawn. Between takes, he often walks alone, staring off into the distance as if searching for something invisible. A few cast members said they've seen him with tears in his eyes even before a scene begins. It's not acting. It's something he's feeling long before the cameras roll. Dallas Jenkins once said in an interview, "Jonathan doesn't just play Jesus. He lives it. And sometimes, I think it breaks him a little." That honesty, that surrender, is what makes Jonathan's portrayal so powerful and so dangerous to his peace. Because when you pour every piece of yourself into something sacred, you eventually run out of pieces to give. He once described it as standing too close to the fire. You want to feel the warmth, but if you stand there too long, it starts to burn. That's what this season has done. It's burned away the line between the man and the Messiah he portrays. Every look, every tear, every silence has become real, too real. And yet, he keeps showing up, because deep down, he believes that this pain, this breaking, is part of something bigger. "If this is what it takes to tell this story honestly," he said softly, "then maybe it's worth it." But even he admits there's a cost, a high one, and with the heaviest scene still ahead, the betrayal, the trial, the cross, Jonathan knows the hardest days haven't even begun. He's walking toward them with a mix of faith and fear, knowing that when the cameras roll again, it won't just be another performance. It will be another test of strength, of spirit, and of whether he can keep carrying this burden that's slowly breaking him from the inside out. As filming continued, something unspoken began to ripple through the set. Everyone could feel it. That quiet, uneasy energy surrounding Jonathan Roumie. The man who once brought light to every corner of the production now carried a kind of silence that made people lower their voices when he walked by. He wasn't angry. He wasn't distant. He was simply different. More fragile. More human. The crew could tell that this wasn't exhaustion that coffee or rest could fix. It was deeper. A soul-level fatigue. Each day, as Jonathan stepped into costume, you could almost see the transformation weighing him down. The ropes felt heavier, the air around him thicker. And though he still smiled and thanked everyone, there was a look in his eyes that no one could quite name. It was something between surrender and sorrow. One morning, they were shooting a sequence that wasn't even emotional, at least not on paper, but something unexpected happened. As Jonathan delivered a single line, his voice broke. His breath caught, and before anyone could react, he just stopped speaking. The director called cut, but Jonathan didn't respond. He stood there, still, his eyes locked on the ground as if seeing something no one else could. Minutes passed. The set grew silent. Finally, he whispered, barely audible, "I can't do this right now." He turned away, walked off set, and disappeared into his trailer. No one followed him, not out of disrespect, but because everyone understood instinctively that this was something only he could face. Inside that trailer, behind a closed door, Jonathan sat alone. No lights, no crew, no lines to memorize, just silence. He later described that moment as falling apart in private. He said it wasn't about forgetting lines or losing focus. It was about reaching a point where his spirit felt too heavy to move forward. In interviews, Jonathan has often spoken about faith being both beautiful and crushing. When you open yourself to God, you open yourself to everything. The love, the pain, the weight of it all, he once said. And on the set of The Chosen, that truth became real in a way he never expected. Every scene that depicted compassion or forgiveness felt uplifting. but every scene that showed suffering or sacrifice began to take root in his heart. It's as if the pain from those stories started to live inside him. He'd leave the set, go home, and still feel the sorrow lingering in his chest. "You can't just walk away from it," he admitted. "It stays. It clings to you." That was when the toll of season 5 became undeniable. His body started showing the signs. Sleepless nights, tension headaches, moments where his heart felt like it was beating too fast for no reason. People told him to rest, to take a few days off, but Jonathan's response was always the same. "If I stop now, I might not come back." That statement frightened people, because it wasn't just about acting. It was about something spiritual, something far beyond the job. Jonathan felt like he'd been called to this role, chosen for it, but being chosen comes with a cost. He often said that portraying Jesus isn't just about embodying love, it's about carrying suffering. "If I only show the peace, it's incomplete," he said. "I have to show the pain too. That's the truth of it. But how do you carry that pain without letting it destroy you?" That's the question Jonathan's been wrestling with ever since filming began. And as season 5 dives deeper into the heartbreak of betrayal and sacrifice, that line, the one between faith and breaking, is becoming thinner and thinner. There was one particular night that still haunts him. After a long day of filming, he stayed behind on set long after everyone had gone home. The set was quiet, the lights dim. He walked alone through the empty space, past the props, past the cameras, until he reached the spot where, earlier that day, he'd knelt in prayer as Jesus. He stood there for a long time, staring at the ground. Then, quietly, he whispered, "I'm sorry." He didn't say to whom, maybe to God, maybe to himself. But those two words held everything. The guilt, the doubt, the exhaustion. He later confessed that, in that moment, he felt like he wasn't doing enough. That no matter how hard he tried, he'd never truly capture the holiness of the story. "It's a strange thing," he said softly, "to play the Son of God and feel like you're failing him at the same time." That guilt, that relentless pressure to get it right, has become both his driving force and his undoing. Because every time Jonathan gives more of himself, he loses a piece of something else. His peace, his balance, maybe even his sense of self. Some days, when the emotional scenes are done, he doesn't even remember filming them. "It's like I black out," he said once. "I just come out of it shaking." The crew has grown protective of him, keeping close watch, ensuring he takes breaks and stays hydrated. But you can't hydrate a broken heart.